What the hell am I looking for in anime? It's an interesting question. It seems like it should be easy to answer. I mean, all I do is make videos about anime, what I like in shows, what I don't like in shows. How could it be possible that I couldn't tell you, or that others couldn't tell you? Surely anyone who's watched a bunch of my videos could easily tell you what I like from anime, right? Well, maybe not. I put out this video that was asking people to recommend me shows that I dropped and to do so by providing the reasoning of why they think I would like those shows. And I got a lot of responses saying, I don't really get why you like shows based on the shows that you like. You seem to enjoy this type of show, but then sometimes you don't. You seem to value these types of things, and yet sometimes you hate shows that have those things. People get really confused. And I guess I don't blame them. But I also think that what I'm looking for might be more specific than what most people would consider. Maybe I just have really hard to define tastes, and it's hard to figure out what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna try and explain it. When it comes to Ghost in the Shell, a lot of it has to do with futurism. I love thinking about where our society is going to go in the future, and I love when there's an applicability to that futurism, where I can say, like, wow, this is where we're really going to end up, and the future it presents is one I want to live in. So this is a very personal sort of bias to it, right? It's like it's presenting a world that I hope will eventually be the real world, and that has a lot to do with the appeal, aside from the fact that it also has lots of interesting themes and stuff to think about, and great characters, and great writing, and amazing production. But the most important thing is that it's a cool sci-fi show. Whereas something like Gunslinger Girl has a lot of interesting themes and characterization and stuff, but it's also the fact that it's about children and child psychology, which I find really fascinating, and of course also that it's a bunch of cute little girls shooting guns. Who doesn't love that? It's awesome, If I think about why I like something like Gakkou Gurashi, it's because I tend to love these shows where it's just a bunch of cute girls doing cute things, and I especially love certain types of character design, like these ones, where I like the super, thin characters who just, big heads on little skinny bodies is adorable to me. And I love the character designs in this show, but the fact that that show actually takes the nature of that type of show and twists it and subverts it and makes it weird and unsettling, that you're watching, like a cute girls doing cute things show, but with this dark undercurrent that makes all of it feel wrong, is awesome. Something like Do-Da-Da-Da I love because of the themes of all the characters being badasses and living in a world where everyone's got their own crazy story. And I love dark urban settings, and I love really out there characters who have crazy powers but are still human, where they're flawed and interesting, and they're not just about being super cool. Each of them is cool, but they're also kind of derpy and weird and emotional. And the headless rider, even though she's the most aesthetic character imaginable, she's a fucking motorcycle riding, Miyuki Sawashiro voiced badass with a cat-eared helmet, and she can fucking form a scythe out of thin air, and she does all these crazy powers. Her actual personality is that she's just a wife. She's just a girly sort of stay-at-home motherly figure who just is really deeply in love with the guy who's obsessed with her, and her relationship's more important to her than the fact that she's got crazy powers. It's good characters. I mean, I just made a video about what's so cool about Sakamoto, but I really love the idea of comedy series that are about taking real emotions and real feelings and sort of presenting them fully realistically, but also ridiculing them. I don't like stuff that takes itself too seriously. I love it when a show can take something that really does mean something to people, their feelings of inferiority complex and stuff like that, and sort of present it completely realistically while also making fun of it and making light of it. It's like you have the empathy with other people to appreciate what kind of suffering they're going through, but that doesn't mean that you have to take it seriously. And I don't think anyone should ever take themselves seriously, which is why I really like the serious comedy genre and style. A show like K-On! It's a bunch of cute girls doing cute things, but the ways that they affect each other, the ways that the characters interact and build from one another is what makes the show interesting in the long run. It feels like what friendship feels like when you watch this show. And as someone who is very, very, like, into friendship as an idea, you know, I have very close friends who I love doing things with and who I've bonded with and come a long way with, where all of me and all of my friends have all learned from one another and grown as a result of being around one another. And I see that reflected in the characters of this show, where all of them become better people as a direct result of their interactions. Each of them sort of completes one another and finds something that they didn't have before, but it never just shoves all those themes in your face. That's all something that you can recognize just from looking at the early episodes and then looking at the later episodes and going, holy shit, these characters have changed so much and grown as a result of being around each other, but it happens so naturally and so gradually in the way that it would in real life, you know? You don't just have a moment where you watch your friend do something and then it totally changes your life forever. I mean, that can happen, but like, you know, it's usually more that you influence one another, and those influences come through in the ways that you speak and the ways that you act, and that's what makes that show great and so interesting and fun to watch, especially when you watch it again and realize just how much the characters have changed. Now, I have always been a fan of the gothic aesthetic and of lollies, obviously. So gothic and Lolita combined, which was the theory behind Petite Cosette, right up my alley. I love Akiyuki Shinbo's directing style because he uses all these harsh colors and really just intense visuals that would all make for great desktop wallpapers. I used to say that this OVA was basically just a collection of desktop wallpapers strung together with an awesome Yuki Kajiura soundtrack. I love Yuki Kajiura's music for much of the same reason. Gothic, very dense and intense with its emotions. I like emotions that are intense. If you're going to feel emotions, you might as well feel them very strongly. But I don't really want to watch characters feel emotions about things that I can't bring myself to care about. Like when you have a romance series where the characters are all screaming about how much they love each other, but I don't care about the characters, I don't love them, I don't want to see their relationship that badly, then that damages it for me. When I watch something like Nagi no Asukara, I can't really imagine any of the characters being happier together than they would be on their own. None of their relationships really made sense to me. I get that they're all really in love with each other, but I don't want to see their relationships succeed because they're not good together and they're all fucking 12, so none of this shit matters in the long run anyways, although there is a time skip in that series. But whereas, as I discussed in my things I look for in anime romance video, when I see a couple that I really see how they can complete each other and see how much good they can do for each other, then I get excited. Which is why when I watch a show like Toradora, where the most interesting thing about the show is how the characters interact with how, like, Taiga and Ryuji make each other better people by being around each other. You know, Taiga has a lot of problems in her life, and Ryuji can help her with those because he knows how to take care of her. She helps him with his confidence and self-esteem and helps him to become, you know, better at making decisions and being a person. They're better together than they were apart, which makes their romance really sweet to watch. It makes me want to root for them so that even when stuff gets all melodramatic, I actually do kinda care because I like these characters and I want to see what they're gonna go through. I also like it when stuff just gets weird. I love stuff like Neo-Ranga here, where the point of it is like to be just totally out there and have all these crazy weird ideas. Sometimes those ideas click, sometimes they don't. The ending of this show sucks, and that's not surprising because it's written by Sho Aikawa. He's not good at writing endings. He did the original Fullmetal Alchemist adaptation. I thought that ending was complete shit as well. Now, sometimes I will watch stuff just because it's interesting. Like Metal Fighter Miku, I watched it because it was one of the first things directed by Akiyuki Shinbo, who again is one of my favorite directors, and it's about girls in power suits doing professional wrestling. It's like a full-on sports anime from the 90s. Interesting. Not good. It's not a good show, but I watched the whole thing because I was interested in what it was and who made it, and that made it an exciting watch. Shows that have really excellent presentation, like Gankutsuo, can be really inviting, or Last Exile has great presentation as well. Infinite Revias has just amazing character writing and interactions, even though it's not really stylistically totally my kind of show. Although I do love the music because it has an awesome rap music soundtrack. I should mention what I look for in the music of my anime. I don't really like orchestral music that much. I much prefer songs that, like, background music that sounds like songs, like something that I would actually listen to normally, because I listen to music all the time, as you can tell by my LP collection over here. I like music that's very dense and complicated, like Sufjan Stevens' The Age of Odds, where there's just so much shit going on in every song that you can listen to it 100,000 times and you'll always find something different to focus on, in addition to the fact that all of it's just really well produced and Sufjan's voice is fucking beautiful. So I also like stuff that's intense and in your face, like Andrew WK, where it's very blunt and direct, but it never loses energy for a second. I love pop music and rock music when it's hard hitting, when it doesn't let up, when every single song is about presenting an idea as strongly as possible and you can just fucking jam to it, But I also can chill out and listen to some fucking Steely Dan, even though Steely Dan's music is pretty dense, just like this other stuff. And it has lots of, complexity, and everything is just in the right place. And it makes it, once again, so no matter how many times you listen to it, you can find something new to focus on. They also have great lyrics in both theirs and Sufjan Stevens' music. So I love anime soundtracks that can capture some of that. Yuki Kajiura's music tends to be very dense and multi-layered. She brings in lots of different instrumentation, and she also mixes some electronic music in with her orchestral music, which I tend to prefer her soundtracks that are more electronic. Really a big fan of the Boogie Pop and Others soundtrack she did. The Dot Hack Sign soundtrack, which is like all basically full songs that just blast over everything because nothing else is happening in that fucking show. And, stuff like Yoshino Yuji, who did the Dot Hack Legend of the Twilight and fucking Spice and Wolf OSTs. Like, stuff that's energetic and fun and cool, and I would actually play it outside the show. If it's not that kind of music, I might not even really notice it. But some of these shows have some stuff like that, like Welcome to the NHK, which has some amazing insert songs, like Hitori Bochi, which makes you feel like your fucking heart's getting torn out of your chest and stomped on because it's fucking depressing. Or Gurren Lagann, the Taku Iwasaki soundtracks in those in that show and other shows he's worked on are really like full songs in totally different styles. They incorporate hip hop and new metal and shit in fucking dubstep into the. Did he do the Gatchaman Crowds OST? That might have been him. I'm not sure. Hiroyuki Sawano is pretty similar. Love his soundtracks as well. And there's just something about a show that can just have so many themes and so much imagery where every single image just drips with character. When you watch Evangelion, it's like what makes the directing of the series so exemplary, what makes this show so entertaining to watch is that every single second of it means something. When you look at Shinji framed in a certain way, and you just see him dripping with pathos. Every facial expression, every movement of the characters just has so much emotion behind it. Sometimes unnecessarily so. And if it's not emotional, then it's just badass. But like the way that military shots are framed is a way that makes it look very, rigid and official, and like, these are the military. It's militant, And then when you see a character just fucking sobbing in the middle of a field and everything's white and sparse and it's like their soul is bared out to the universe. It's fucking beautiful. It's unbelievably good. But sometimes I just want to watch cute stuff and really weird stuff, like cute girls in weird scenarios with special powers, and like there's talking cats and there's a cat fight club, and who doesn't want to watch a show about a cat fucking fight club, Or sometimes you can tell the classic adventure story and, these classic styles of stories with so much exuberance that it just blows your fucking mind, like Eureka 7, where the color design is so explosive and the character designs are so memorable, and every single scene is just brimming with as much life as it possibly could be. This is a show that isn't just telling an adventure story, it's excited about adventure stories. It's like, let's bring out every possible emotion of the adventure story. Yeah, sometimes, like in Space Patrol Luluco, sometimes a 12-year-old's, emotions might seem shallow, but they're felt so intensely. And so let's bring that intensity into the production. Make everything feel big, feel intense, feel massive. Put some great music behind it. You know, I hope I'm getting my point across. What I don't like in shows is when they feel thin. I like my shows to be dense. I like them to have lots of things for me to think about. It's not a matter of what really happens in the show, because I can think a lot about even the most simplistic of things, you know? Everyday life is full of detail. Look at this. Look at this one image. This is just a guy in his room, but there's so much happening here, and all of it means something. The fact that I would have a poster of Mami from Madoka Magica and fucking, I believe this is Sakura from Cardcaptor Sakura dressed as Madoka, and Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service, all having tea together. Like, what does it say about me that this is the kind of thing I would have on my wall? Aside from the fact that it says I'm an anime fan, says I love magical girls, and obviously have a several generations spanning taste. We've got a character from the 80s, a character from the 90s, and a character from the 2000s, all having tea together in this very cutesy and highly detailed scenario where you've got some of the mascot characters from the different shows all sitting around the table and all these cakes. I think it says a lot about what kind of person I am without me having to even explain it. And so when you have a show like, let's say, K-On!, where the images are so detailed and tell you so much about the world where the characters come from, and where you can look at Yui's room in the first episode and you totally get what kind of person she is without it having to be explained or explored in any depth. And then, you know, what ultimately comes of her narrative arc is something we can all relate to, and it's important to everyone. The idea that your friends change you, and that, you know, as you move into adulthood, then you have to learn to take on certain responsibilities and, you know, become a better person, hopefully. I think that's one of the most important messages out there, the idea of trying to become better people by working together. What more could you want? I mean, if you want to reach the big, important sci-fi Star Trek future, if you want the Starfleet, if you want what Ghost in the Shell is promising that we might eventually get to, if you want, you know, to reach out to space, we all need to work together, and we all need to better ourselves. We need to keep improving our technology and keep improving our mental states and keep improving our society so we don't all blow each other up. We have to keep learning from each other and becoming better people. That's what that show's about. That's the deepest message you could possibly find. What I don't want to watch is a show that I don't get anything out of, that I don't understand why I'm supposed to care. You know, it's pretty easy to care, I think, about characters because, you know, I always assume there's more going on. If I look at a character and I can see generally who they are, then I can start to pull back the layers and see who they've been or what's made them that way, you know? I've often said that for me, the best characters are ones where I can imagine them in other scenarios, where I can take that character as I understand them, and if I dropped them into another scenario, I could kind of figure out how they're going to act in that scenario. Now, what I don't like is characters where I can predict what they're going to do in those scenarios because of the fact that it follows a template, where they will always have the same reaction no matter what scenario they're in. That's where you get these very flaccid, thin characters who are just like a tsundere or something, where the reaction is always going to be exactly the same. No matter what the scenario is, it's going to be that she gets mad and hits the main character for some reason. You know? I think it's great, though, if I can understand a character so well that if I put them in another situation and they had a more nuanced reaction, I can still figure out what that reaction might be. It's interesting to take a show with a strong central ensemble cast like The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, and you can put them into any scenario, as the show is wont to do, and the way that they will all bounce off of each other comes very naturally because of who each character is and how their interactions work. That's having good chemistry, and I love characters that have great chemistry together. So, I guess what I'm looking for in anime is a combination of a bunch of different things. I like anime that make me think. I like anime that have lots of ideas in them. I like shows that present me with something new. I like shows that fit an aesthetic that I appreciate, which is somewhere between really dark and gothy, somewhere between like Kashern Sins, which is probably what I would consider to be the best looking anime series ever made. Best looking anime TV series, absolutely delightful character designs, super dark, gritty, interesting tone. Somewhere between that and the design work of Hardcatch Precure. Same character designer, same super sleek, edgy designs, but with a super cutesy and pink and fun aesthetic. Somewhere between those two things is the aesthetic I'm looking for. I like things that are very boldly colored. I love pastels and stuff that's striking and stuff that, like, when you see it, it immediately strikes you as this is a different style. This is communicating some kind of tone. I like that kind of stuff. But I also like when you can draw real life in a lot of detail, like K-On! K-On! Doesn't really fit my aesthetic that well. I'm not the biggest fan of the character designs. I'm not the biggest fan of the color design, but it just fits the tone of the series just right, and I appreciate what the series is trying to do so much that makes it really enjoyable for me. You know? There's a lot of reasons to like anime, and so trying to boil it down to like, well, obviously he likes shows that are psychological, like Welcome to the NHK, so why wouldn't he like another psychological show? Well, what is the psychology of that show? What is it presenting? Welcome to the NHK is interesting because it's such a complete character study, and it has great themes of how, like, you can't necessarily beat all of your personal demons just by trying. You sometimes have to be forced into it, or sometimes it's just the way that your life goes puts you into certain courses, you know? I guess it's not easy. To figure it out. And that's why I have to go through all these dropped shows and individually say, like, well, here's why I didn't get into this one. Here's why I didn't get into that one, you know? Because even though, again, as I talked about in my last video about Phantom, where it was like, Gunslinger Girl's also a show about assassins who have their brainwashed and they have to fight for the government, but there's a reason I found that show interesting, whereas I didn't find Phantom interesting. And even though it's a show about gunfighting with a bunch of hot chicks, and I love Kanan, which is about gunfighting with a bunch of hot chicks, as I explained in that video, there was differences between those in the way they're presented. So, I don't know. Maybe it's not easy. And a lot of people putting up arguments are pretty much just arguing for why they like the show. They're not really arguing for why I like the show. But, you know, I'm willing to give a lot of leeway for that, because honestly, predicting what I'm going to like is probably not the easiest thing in the world.